All right, well, we have a quorum, so I will call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Tim, since you're in person there and you have a flag, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
Justice.
with liberty and
justice
justice.
for all. I had a little hiccup in my delivery there.
All right, well, I have the first order of business to the revised oaths for Mike and Norina. I've got Mike here on top. Would you like to repeat after me your oath? Raise your right hand. I do solemnly affirm
I do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of library trustee
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of library trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
All right, well, congratulations again. You've been sworn in twice now. Let's see, and I have Norina. If you would raise your right hand. Same oath, I do solemnly swear, I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of library trustee according to the best of my ability.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of library trustee according to the best of my ability.
All right, well, congratulations again. All right, the second order of business is the approval of minutes from March 9th, 2022. That is the special meeting of the evaporative cooler. And I know there were a lot of abstentions for that. There were 7 who attended that meeting. And now I know Jenna has the information about who needs to abstain, but if you weren't at that meeting, obviously you need to abstain from the March 9th, 2022 meeting when we approved the evaporative cooler system.
Kathy, it looks like Barbara raised her hand. She's attending remotely, but she did the WebEx thing where you can raise your hand. So,
Okay, Barbara?
I don't believe I raised my hand, but I may have hit something by accident.
okay.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not getting a picture on my screen for the video portion. I can, oh, there we go. Oh, we're good now. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the
Yes,
special meeting on March 9th, 2022?
yes,
Bill, would I have a second?
Yes, Marcia?
Bill and Marcia, okay. Are there any abstentions?
I'll be abstaining.
Okay,
Barbara too. I wasn't there.
all right, so I believe we have a quorum from the actual meeting. So for those trustees who are voting on this, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
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 Oh, in the minutes, it says Barbara was there.
this is March 9th. This is an old one.
No,
this is-
I was there for that one, but not for the special meeting.
This
You
was
were
a
not,
special-
you were there for the special meeting when we did the evaporative cooler.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
for that.
Did
Yes.
did
Yeah,
you vote
that's
on
what we're
that?
voting on. Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right,
All
so
right.
the only 3
The
people that
second-
have,
So
Yeah.
I, so I can vote yes for
I
that.
have the list of
Okay.
abstentions, if anybody wants to be clear. On March 9, Peter, Elish, Tony, and Vanessa, right? Were there.
No, they're the ones that have to abstain.
We're not there.
Right, we're not there.
Okay, so we had a quorum of people in our, who were at the meeting, so we will, the motion passes at 6:06. The second item of business is the approval of minutes from March 17th, 2022, the regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting?
So moved.
Barbara, second Phil. All right, if you are in favor of improving the minutes from March 17th, 2022, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
So am I,
Peter and
Tony.
Tony, okay. All right, the motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry, were there any, did anyone have, any?
So I voted aye on that. I don't know if I think I was talking to Tim when you were taking the vote, so I don't know if you saw it, but I voted yes.
Okay. I was gonna ask, anyone opposed? I know there were several abstentions, but, all right, so that passes, at 6:07. Now we have the meeting, approval of minutes from April 13th, 2022. The special meeting at which we, passed a motion to allow video conferencing, when the open meetings law is reinstated, as opposed to right now when it's a state of emergency. So the open meetings law is suspended at the moment. Let's see. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 13th, 2022, the special meeting?
Yes.
Bill? Second? Marcia? Okay. Are there any abstentions from this?
Yes, I wasn't there.
Barbara and
Mike?
Tony and
Tony.
Peter, I believe, and there was someone else who.
Mike.
Excuse me.
Barbara, Mike, Peter, Tony.
Yes.
Okay. So everyone who was present at the meeting, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye.
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 All right, the motion, is there any, anyone opposed? So the motion passes at 6:09 PM. Right, is there any public input?
Yes, I do have some public input to share.
Okay.
This is from David Gilliam, and he writes, I find it patently absurd that GPL patrons have to lose use of GPL's largest public meeting room for 10 days, twice, because the town of Guilderland and Guilderland Central School District can't provide appropriate spaces for public voting. How can GCSD provide space for the school district and GPL budget voting? Don't registered sex offenders vote in those referendums? Are schools closed on days when budget voting takes place? GPL should be paid equitably for use of the Helderberg room and parking facilities for the inconvenience to GPL patrons. And that's all I have to share for right now.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Now we are moving to personnel actions. Um, We have several of them, which I have to,
I have the revised sheet here if you want me to read them for you.
would you like to read them, Tim?
If you don't mind, it might be faster. So in the original packet, there were 4, there are now 3. So the first of the 3, to approve the promotional appointment of Lauren Vincent, full-time library clerk to full-time principal library clerk in the Access Services Department, effective April 6th, 2022, with a pay rate of $23.32 per hour for 37.5 hours a week. And I need to pause, I missed one word. She was full-time senior library clerk, and she's now full-time principal library clerk. I had left the word senior out the first time that I read it. If I recall correctly, we read all 3 and then vote on them as a whole, correct?
Yes.
Okay, to approve the appointment of Samantha McIntosh, part-time library page in the Access Services Department, effective April 6th, 2022, with a pay rate of $13.20 per hour or 8 hours per week. And the appointment of Jeff Gangel, full-time custodial worker in the Maintenance Department, effective April 20th, 2022, with a pay rate of $14.57 an hour for 37.5 hours a week.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve these personnel actions?
I'll make that motion.
Who's that,
Peter, second, Phil? All right, everyone in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously at 6:12 PM. All right, now my understanding, is that, as you're all aware, our treasurer, resigned to take another position, where he could not, continue to be the treasurer. And so, my understanding is that we need to, accept his resignation, formally accept it, as a board. And I think you all have the, his letter that he sent in the board packet. And do I have a motion to accept the resignation of the treasurer, Tony Rapicki?
I'll move. Mike?
Mike moved.
Okay, Mike, and Phil second? All right, even though we probably don't want to, but is everyone in favor of accepting the resignation of our treasurer? Please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed?
Kathy, before we leave the subject, I just want to send out a big shout out and thank you to him. He was so dedicated, so thorough, just one fantastic guy, and I wish him well in his new move up the ladder, so to speak. Thank you again, Tony, on behalf of all of us.
Mhm.
I agree.
Here, here.
Thank you, Tony. So the, even though it's, we didn't want to, but this passes unanimously, accepting the resignation of Treasurer Tony Rapicki at 6:15 PM. Now, in the absence of a treasurer, I wasn't sure who was going to give the treasurer's report for this meeting. I think we had brought this up previously with Tim, so do we have a treasurer designee or designated?
We really don't. So, and my position really was, I'm not sure that anyone can give a treasurer's report except for a treasurer. But I would certainly be willing to answer any questions based on the financials that board members have, which, you know, the financial operation of the library, as Tony typically would say at meetings, has been a typical March. So, you know, there's nothing I'm aware of that's out of line or worth any concern. So I guess if that constitutes a sort of pseudo treasurer's report, that's fine. But please do ask questions if you have any.
Well, I have a question. I know that as far as the check register, that's time sensitive and we need to do that, but for the treasurer's report, if, again, I don't know what the prospects are of getting someone to you know, fill that position, you know, quickly, but is there any urgency on voting on that now, or could we put that off until hopefully if we got a new treasurer, they could actually look over things and give us a real report? I'd like to do that if it's possible.
Bill?
Regarding voting on that, to Peter's point from a few meetings ago, and from what I've looked into and talked to some other people, we're not supposed to vote on it.
Vote on it,
We're
right?
supposed to just say thank you. So technically, it's entered into the board packet. If that's, is that something that's publicly available, the board packet?
Oh, yeah.
Then I think, thanks for the treasury report, Tony.
Right.
All right, good point. Thanks, Phil. I had forgotten that we had.
Okay, a related item, obviously, is the procedure for recruiting the new treasurer. I did participate in a meeting where we talked about this. I think we were going to have people who are interested submit their resumes and a cover letter explaining their interest in the position. But I don't know if a number of people have applied already, or if we're still recruiting for a new treasurer.
I actually believe we have not started recruiting yet. I'm not sure about that, but we would typically do it through social media. And I have not seen a call for a treasurer. I can put one together with Luann tomorrow and begin recruiting, but as far as I know, we have not started recruiting.
Okay,
And you know, it makes sense for me and Luann to do that. I do have a treasurer's job description and some treasurer's documents from other libraries. But, and I'm not gonna die on this hill, but it's not the library that needs a treasurer, it's the board that needs a treasurer. So maybe the board should be doing it. But if you guys want us to do it, we'll do it.
I'm sorry, you wanted the board to do the recruiting, or, I mean, the library needs to advertise the position, correct?
Well, yes, I guess, you know, it just seems like the library isn't looking for a treasurer. The library board is looking for a treasurer. But since the social media is controlled by us, we can do it. You know, that would be fine, so.
Well, I mean, yes, obviously, it's the board looking for a treasurer. And I didn't know, based upon the materials that we reviewed at our meeting, about the process of finding a new treasurer. I don't know if we were looking for another volunteer, or if we were looking for someone to be paid a stipend. That was not really ever decided.
Right. So the background on that is very complicated regulations for a school district public library treasurer. They cannot be a board member, so that rules out all the board members. They also cannot be an existing staff member of the library. They do report and work for the board, but if there's a stipend, that's the same kind of thing. It would run through our fiscal office. One of our neighboring school district libraries in Voorheesville does pay their treasurer $35 an hour. And just in my 8 years here, we've had 3 or maybe 4 treasurers. They are typically hard to find on a voluntary basis, but I guess the prudent fiscal thing to do would be to search for one as a volunteer, and if that isn't successful, then, you know, put a stipend on it. I'm not saying I can't make that decision, but that would be a reasonable way to move forward. I think, and I might look down the table here at Tim Riley, I think we need to have a treasurer drop dead by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. Because I think that it's very important to have that outside set of eyes before you close the year's books. I don't know if you would agree, but you know, it can wait a couple of weeks, but I don't think it can wait, you know, forever. So that would mitigate toward possibly offering a stipend just first thing. So.
Was Tony paid, Tim? Was Tony paid?
No, in my 8 years, we've not had a paid treasurer, and I don't think the library ever has had a paid treasurer.
That is correct. We have never had a paid treasurer. There's always been a community member that has stepped up as a volunteer.
Mhm.
As we are all volunteers.
Yep. Tim was going to say something.
I was just going to add, well, first of all, I'm Tim Riley, the new fiscal officer. I was just going to add that there may be a cushion since the fiscal year does end June 30th, but the books won't be audited until August or September or so by the external auditors, of course. You may have a cushion to what Tim had said, the urgency anyway. But again, I'm new here and don't know all the bylaws, but I would say you'd have a cushion.
So let me get it straight. So what happens is the fiscal department produces these reports, right? And the treasurer looks them over, you know, looking for any inconsistencies, looks at the backup and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the PD.
Yep. There's a couple other things that we should explore, like and it's a perfect time for us to explore with a new fiscal officer, because our treasurer, despite how good Tony was, has never done the 3 things that are specified in the library trustee handbook that a treasurer should do. One of them is the bank reconciliations, which are currently done in our fiscal office. And that's, I believe, kind of a separation of duties, best practice. And off the top of my head, I can't remember what the other 2 are, but they're sort of similar things. Like one of the regulations says that they should actually make the deposits to the bank. Now currently we are not handling cash, so that would be not an issue at the moment, but I'm sure there are some electronic deposits that take place, and then there's checks that we do receive that need to be deposited. So we haven't had time with Tim, who started last Wednesday, to have that discussion yet, but we probably should try to move toward following the recommendations in the library trustee handbook as closely as possible. So, which Phil has put into the chat a link to those. But at any rate, the key question seems to be, do we want to offer a stipend out of the gate, or do we want to just place an ad and try to get someone who's interested in the library and will volunteer?
I would just ask whether anyone, you know, here at this meeting knows anyone that they think is a plausible candidate for this. Do we have any people that anyone here, you know, could reach out to? I don't personally have anyone in mind, but I wondered if anyone else did, because that would at least, I just don't have a sense of how hard it is going to be to find a volunteer for this.
Well, I have a person that I know, but I'm unclear about the process, and given we kind of had some issues with people questioning the process when we volunteered individuals for the trustee position, I want to be clear about the process before I start reaching out to anybody.
Right, Tim, and I also assume that in the position description of whatever announcement we do, it will reflect the requirements
Yes.
of the state law.
Yeah, yeah. And the process is of a very important concern. That's sort of what I was getting at when I said the board is looking for a treasurer. Like, it's not, I don't think, appropriate for the library staff to design the process. So you guys need to agree if you want to advertise, we can place the ads. And then if you want to, do interviews and which committee, or is it the board as a whole that's looking for a treasurer?
Don't you have a finance committee?
We do.
Right, so shouldn't there'd be a finance committee meeting to look at the draft announcement, okay, and see if that's okay? And then, I mean, the process is a recruitment process,
Yeah.
right? You got, whatever's the best way to do it. And then the finance committee can set up the procedure on, are we having interviews, whatever, and then the board blesses it or whatever, go from there.
Works for me.
The finance
Sounds
committee is
good.
within the
And-
board.
The board's finance committee.
Well, I'm the chair of the finance committee, so I'm happy to, I'll, reach out to the other members of the committee and we can try and schedule a meeting as soon as possible to get things rolling on, how we're gonna advertise.
I think I'm on it too. Can we get the requirements from you, Tim, so we can have something to start with?
Yep. That's what I'm writing down right now. So we'll hopefully be able to do that tomorrow. So.
If you get that out, the requirements of the job, before and we also have to decide whether it's a stipend or a voluntary job. I'm on another not-for-profit and there's somebody who might be interested, but I just can't, talk to them without knowing what the requirements are, what the process will be, and whether or not they expect, there's an expectation of payment. So I think if you get that together and get it to the board members, we may all have someone that we think might be interested.
Right, and then maybe if you start, where it's a non-paid position and you don't hear from anybody in a month, right, then you reissue it with a stipend.
So what was the time frame and needing to get some money?
The end of the fiscal year is June 30th, and then the audit is usually in August, begins in August, late August. So we've got several months, but, it's better to have one than not,
Yeah, I would say if you wait till the last minute, then the person you're getting has to review things from March, April, May, June, and whoever, whatever month. So I think it's time sensitive kind of.
Well, I'm happy to, along with the finance committee, to try and move this forward, but I'd like to hear, what we want the process to be, so I know what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
So I don't know if we need to vote on anything or we just need to hear what people think and come to a consensus or what.
Well, I think we need to decide whether it's paying or non-paying out of the gate. So when you get the material together and the process and the requirements of the job, you have to say whether or not it's voluntary, or if you want to wait a month, it's cutting it very thinly, but I'm not adverse to that.
Tim Riley has a question or comment.
If the precedent is non-paid, why would we change that?
Unless we're
Why-
desperate.
Why is it just, well, that comes if you don't get responsible.
Right,
but
exactly.
Historically, you've always had a free treasurer. What's to assume we wouldn't have a free treasurer?
Do we want to agree on a time frame for that trial period? of that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well,
I think it
when
should be-
is our next month's board meeting? Maybe if we have not had, good, plausible candidates that we've received by next month's board meeting, that we would.
It's sooner than later.
Yeah, that's the 19th though.
Because this is a late meeting because of last week.
So that gives
You've got a shorter span.
3 weeks. Is that not enough time?
So
Well,
how
it
do they
depends on
advertise?
when it comes out.
They don't even know about it. Nobody knows about it.
Right, but if we could get advertisements out soon, like in the next, by early next week sometime, I don't know how quickly we'll be able to. get that
You
together.
got like 3 weeks.
Yeah, is that, do we think that's enough time or not? If we started advertising it on our social media and everything by sometime next week, that would give a couple weeks, it would give, 2.5 weeks or something until our next board
I
meeting.
think so.
So the experience I've had in my 8 years, and I might also ask Barbara to reflect as a longtime board member and maybe Peter, that we've had, I believe, 4 treasurers in the last 8 years. And the last time we replaced the treasurer, we had 2 candidates come forward and the board interviewed them and chose one. And the two times before that I was involved in a treasurer change, it was beating the bushes. And it just took a long time, like 3, 4, 5 months. I can't quite remember. And in the first case, we had a man named Dan Greendale become our treasurer. We did not know at the time. He was an employee of the library fiscal office, and we didn't know that that was not kosher. So, he was our treasurer that we found the first time. And the second time, it was a board member who had just gone off the board because he had moved to the Albany area, didn't live in the school district anymore, and he became our treasurer just because he was thoroughly familiar with, how we operate. But the last time we did replace the treasurer, we were pleased and surprised to have 2 candidates. And it was advertised as voluntary, so.
So I think though, right, if we meet again on May 19th and we haven't got anybody, we could say, all right, give it 1 more week or 2 more weeks. And if there's nobody in, right, then we're going out for $30 an hour, whatever whatever we think the stipend is.
But we're also going to be including the 3 points you made, Tim, about what the responsibilities are, but were never done by any treasurer, from what I hear.
Right, and they will take a few hours a month, maybe 3 hours a month or something like that.
Okay.
So what have we decided? We're just gonna advertise, the library's gonna advertise that position is available.
The finance committee is going to meet first, right?
Right, so we'll try and get a finance committee meeting as soon as possible, and then we can agree on, so Tim will provide us with the requirements for the position. We'll try and have a finance committee meeting as soon as possible and figure out the language of whatever advertisement we're gonna put out. And then we can, hopefully the library can put that out on social media and everything, and then we'll see what response we get. Is that?
Tim, do other libraries pay their treasurers?
Some do. Our neighbors in Voorheesville do. Other than that, I think it's probably, I'm looking at Natalie, but I'm thinking maybe 50-50.
Okay. All right.
So I just want to be.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tim, the other gentleman that applied, or the other person that applied, when Tony applied, do you still have that letter of intent? And could we just reach out to that individual? Because I think they were both highly qualified, and we just really lucked out that year.
We could try. It would probably take, given that, we moved all of our files and everything during the construction process, it would probably take half a day to remember her name. But I'll keep an eye out for it as I dig up the other treasurer information. So I remember her, but I don't remember her name or really much of anything. I think she was new to the community and was looking for a way to get involved and contribute to the community. And she was sort of a retirement age person, is all I remember. So,
Do we have a list of quals or it's like whoever, or do you already have that?
yeah, it's in the,
what you've got already.
yeah. Just basically need to have the ability to read financial documents and to understand cash flow and basic not-for-profit.
So I'm just still unclear. Why is the committee meeting? I need to know why I'm meeting to discuss what.
Well, the suggestion was to figure out what the posting is going to look like, that we're like, what are we actually posting to the public that we're looking for? So it would be taking whatever the requirements that we get from Tim and then put that into a form that we're saying, this is what we're looking for to send out to the community. So that's my understanding.
And is the board in agreement with that? I just want to make sure nobody's going to say later on that this was not an approved process. And if I might suggest that we vote that the finance committee,
That's fine.
discuss the requirements and post it.
Well, I mean, I have questions, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. But I mean, we are going to need to resolve, the steps following that. So suppose we get more than one applicant. Do we want the finance committee to have a role in evaluating, screening the applicants and presenting one to the board? Or do we want the whole board to take this decision? It's not something our bylaws address as far as I can tell. So I think we just need to decide how we want to as a group. do
What
it.
happened the last time?
I think that's after, right, after we post, after we get interest, right?
Right, but if we want to keep things moving relatively fast, like we should know, because if we get, a bunch of, if we get multiple applicants, which who knows if we will or not, but if we do, then should the finance committee be meeting to evaluate those and figure it out, or do we wait and have the whole board consider it?
I think it depends upon how many people you get. If you get 10 people, I think the finance committee has got to go through it and send the top 2 or the top 3, for the board to do. So we don't run into the same kind of problems that we ran into in filling the temporary board positions. The board needs to make the decision ultimately.
I think.
Barbara, did you have a question?
I just had a comment. What we have done in years past, and we sort of didn't follow the same procedure, is that, all the resumes are shared with all the board members, and a meeting is set up in order to interview the candidates. And then the board, sometimes if there's a dire need for the person, it would have a special meeting just for the sake of, choosing the individual. So, but we've never had 10 people apply for a position such as this. So I think if we put it in the finance committee's hands, if we get lucky enough to get some applicants, they can share the resumes with the rest of us. And, then collectively and democratically, we can choose the next individual if we're lucky enough to get them.
For her.
Is that a acceptable plan to the rest of the board? Sound good? All right, I don't hear any objections, so thank you, Finance Committee, for taking this on, and we'll look forward to getting those 10 resumes.
Just have one quick suggestion. When I email out these requirements, which are actually in the chat, but when I email them out, they're relatively simple, so maybe we can resolve it via email with the committee, what the job ad is going to look like. That would save everybody some time.
Is there any open meeting law concerns with making a decision like that over email, or is that something we can do?
It's just
Bill, question?
a job ad, basically.
Yeah, so I sent the same link that I put in the meeting out to the board email so you have it, but we're talking about a paragraph. I could read what are the typical duties of a public library treasurer, which includes the 4 items that they're typically responsible for. I mean, that's probably what we're putting in the description. It's probably going to be a cut and paste from this document. So if you'd like, the public library treasurer is responsible for depositing and dispersing library funds, maintaining appropriate accounting records, and providing a monthly treasurer's report to the board. Typical duties include reconciliation of bank statements, preparation of monthly report to the board of receipts and disbursements, signing checks for payment after board approval, and oversight of investments.
No quals, Phil?
No what?
Qualifications, like you need to have education or whatever?
I do not believe so. None of us had any requirements coming into here either. I don't believe there's anything in there, but we make a decision, so.
I mean, I'm happy with that as the job description. We want to say something about, this is a volunteer position in whatever ad we put out, just so that's clear. If we want to just decide right now on what the language we want to do is and not have to have the finance committee meet or do that, that's fine with me.
I have a question.
Go
Does
ahead,
Tony oversee investments?
No.
No. I mean, I remember him in a recent meeting in the last 6 months talking about our annual investment strategy. So I would say collaborated with the fiscal office to, understand that process. He did not sign checks, so that would be a change if you want.
He didn't produce reports either, did he? Wasn't that done by staff?
The staff has always, for the 8 years I've been here, produced the reports.
So it sounds like the requirements for a treasurer's job were never really met.
Correct.
Except here and there.
Well, I think
Bearing in mind that this is typical duties, it's not necessarily a hard and fast law here.
Yeah, okay.
I will say that looking through the other FAQ in here, one of the things they mention is that typically an assistant treasurer, is that what they called it? Can be assigned by the board as an additional check signer. So technically you don't have to have them signing checks, but they're approved to do so. And we could have somebody else on the board assigned for that role as well.
Mhm.
And we currently do.
Are we sending this to the finance committee or are we, determining, what we're doing now, or does the finance committee need to meet to just refine this?
Tim Riley has a comment or question.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to the comment about the treasurer preparing a treasurer's report. There's a difference between what the staff is providing, which is a balance sheet and a few other financials, and a treasurer's report. That treasurer's report should be an analysis of that contribution from the staff. In other words, I've reviewed the balance sheet and find no abnormalities. I've reviewed the check register and find no abnormalities. That's the treasurer's report. So I don't want you to think that the staff is preparing the treasurer's report. They're preparing documents for the treasurer to review and
Right.
create their report from.
Right.
Just to
Thank you.
clarify.
Barbara, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I think the first duty that Phil read off would be totally impractical from a volunteer person that they had to make deposits. Now, what our treasurer has always done is checked the deposit record with, like a bank reconciliation type of thing, but
I
they've never
agree.
run to the bank every day and,
But
made deposits.
I
That's not
agree.
listed
And
there.
that would be a conflict of interest for that treasurer to be making deposit and doing the bank reconciliation.
So that's not listed there. The first list was reconciliation of bank statements, which I
Yeah.
think lines up with what we get in that monthly report.
Mhm.
The second one was preparation of the monthly report to the board of receipts, and disbursement. The third was signing checks for payment after board approval, and the fourth was oversight of investments.
Phil, didn't you say that was typical duties may include, what was the language on that?
It is specifically, and again, this is in a frequently asked questions section. The full section was, what are the typical duties of a public library treasurer? The treasurer is a separate officer of a public library corporation and is appointed by the Board of Trustees. They are required to take an oath of office and perform their duties as defined in state law. Association libraries are not covered by this law. Special library districts are advised to refer to their enabling legislation. The public library treasurer is responsible, I apologize, it says this here, is responsible for depositing and dispersing library funds, maintaining appropriate accounting records, and providing a monthly treasurer's report to the board. Following that, it says typical duties include, and it shows that list. So technically, they're supposed to be the ones depositing and dispersing the library funds.
Can that
It
also
doesn't make
mean,
any sense.
Responsible.
can that also mean reviewing the deposits? The receipts of the deposits that we physically make?
I am not a lawyer.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't
It's-
believe that one person should deposit and reconcile. Okay, that's just not good accounting control.
Right.
So he can delegate someone to make the deposit and then he can do the reconciliation or vice versa, but one person should not, or there should be a second set of eyes on it, but no one person should sign and do both.
Right.
So that may very well be the case, but what I'm looking at here is the Handbook for Library Trustees of New York State, specifically the role of the public library treasurer. And if that doesn't line up with what we're looking for, then we might need to reach out to Tim Burke. And beyond that, possibly our lawyer, if we're looking for a different way to define this, or we may even be told it's a very loose regulation. You have to have the treasurer, they have to be separate. And beyond that, you can wiggle with what their actual role is. But we're going to have to speak to someone else on that then before we post this, if we're looking to be fully accurate and if we're not comfortable with what the state says the requirements are.
So, should we
Well, the other-
designate to the finance committee to look into that?
Right.
I mean, it's not, it sounds like, it's a little more complicated than we can, figure out at this meeting.
All
That's
right,
probably the case then. One thing I'll add is in the beginning of the document, it does say, please note this document is for advisory purposes only and should not be considered as legal or accounting advice. As always, consult with your library attorney and independent auditor to determine the best policies and practices for your
I think
specific
that's
institution.
hilarious.
I realize how silly that is, but essentially, we've got, Luann also put the bylaws into chat. So there's probably our specific usage of or modification to what we do in New York State in general right there.
Luann also asked who people should reach out to before we lose it in the chat. Yeah, scroll down. Who's the contact person if there's people interested?
Yeah, who do you guys, and my suggestion would actually be the chair of the finance committee.
That's fine with me. Or, if people want to send me resumes or whatever, I can.
We put your Guilderland Library
Yeah,
email address.
use my library email address.
Okay.
Yeah. I can send that to the rest of the board if we get anything.
And maybe take what Luann said, send it to our attorney and say, does this match up with, the law for what,
Exactly.
library should do? And then once we get her answer, we could just simply post that. Why can't we post that?
Sure. Why don't we send the section from the bylaws as well as the section from the handbook,
Page 95.
page 95, and we'll send them in the same email to Chris Lanchanton and ask her,
What do we do?
what do we do? Because we haven't exactly followed either our own bylaws or the trustee handbook.
Should we throw in the mission statement at the end of it, just for cultural?
Okay, so, what are we going to do? Are we going to send it to the lawyer first and then to the finance committee, or is the finance committee still involved? Because, once we do recruit, then, I thought we were thinking that the finance committee would review the candidates and send resumes to the board. Is that what,
So here's
it's hard for me to hear what's going on in the room, I'm sorry.
here's a suggestion. If we send this information to Chris and say, we need to advertise for a new treasurer and we want to discuss with you to make sure we're, in line with, the legal requirements for the position. Try and have the finance committee have set up a meeting with Chris after she's, looked at this stuff. And then we can, based on that, figure out what we want to advertise, what we need to advertise out. And then we can, get that moving. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Me, is everyone else?
yes.
I think to save
Plan?
time, I would copy Tim Burke on that as well, because he's going to have a better idea of how other libraries have implemented this
For sure.
and how much of New York is, you have to do this, and how much of it is guidance and our bylaws override it.
Okay, that sounds good to me too. And we can try and send that stuff to them, and then if we can, set up a virtual, a Zoom committee meeting, inviting both Tim Burke and Chris, as soon as we can, find a time when everybody's available.
Will you send that email?
Sounds good. Anybody else have any comments? Did you have a comment, Barbara?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Barbara.
I think Mike summed it up. I want to make sure that we have a legal basis, not just the guidance from the Library Association, but that we have a legal basis and we do it right. If there is an actual state law that says you have to do it this way, then we have to do it that way. If it's just guidance, I mean, what we've been doing seems to have been working, at least the 8 years that Tim's there. We have an accounting of our funds. There's oversight. Let's find out what our legal requirements are.
Right, no audit findings, right, during the years, right?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that a plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Mike, am I sending the email to Chris and Tim and you, or are you sending it?
Sure,
I could do that.
If you want to send that, to the two of them,
With you.
yeah, that's fine. And then, we could try and do a doodle poll or something to find a meeting time.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Unless anybody else has any, anything to add, I think we'll go with that plan. Next on the agenda, I have directors and department heads reports for March 2022.
Okay, I will try to do 5 minutes. So, in the last month, you know, you had the opportunity, of course, to read the reports, but the things I would like to highlight are that we have revamped our solar monitoring system. So we're now able to know what our 2007 solar installation is producing. And so we did that as part of the building project. It was something that we were able to do because the bids came in so low. So we're grateful for that, and you'll be getting an email soon showing you how to connect to a widget that we are going to put on our website so you can see our daily energy production. And I think it's probably the precursor to, it's probably time to look at putting a new solar system up there, since the equipment's gotten a lot more productive since 2007. And also we have more roof than we used to have. So we've actually been doing some work on that kind of behind the scenes. Kind of the main thing happening in admin is that in March that Natalie came aboard. I believe it was March 9th. It's been great working with her so far. I mean no self-deprecation when I say that she is much more organized than I am. So we will probably be moving ahead in a more effective fashion in the future. She's also creative, and that's wonderful. Everybody has been enjoying working with her. Now, it happened in April, but Tim Riley has also begun. And for both Tim Riley, our new fiscal officer, and Natalie Herto, our new assistant director, we want to very, very strongly thank Carol and Margaret, Carol Kopp, Margaret Garrett, for the work they've been doing to orient them to the position. We'll probably be using Carol and Margaret's services for another month or so. And then these two people will be loosed upon the world. So thank you. That's a big positive development. From Luann's report, I'm not quite sure, actually this was not in her report, but there were a lot of great social media numbers in Luann's report. And then she emailed some of us a Facebook engagement measure where Guilderland scored a 938, Albany scored a 531, and Schenectady scored a 192. And so we are outperforming larger libraries in one of the metrics on Facebook. The Fine Free has gone very well. In Phil's report, you'll see that since we started on March 1st, 91% of material has come in, been returned on time, and 96% within 3 days of the due date. It's also been positively received by the public. And those numbers are very similar to the days when we charged fines as well. So after 1 month sample, it's achieved the same objectives as having fines. The automated sorting machine is running. If you haven't seen it, it's a lot of fun to return a book in there and watch through the windows. The circulation in general in the report, great numbers this year for March compared to last year for March. But of course, last year in March, we were only doing curbside service for circulation. So people are using the library again. There are, especially on weekends, really good numbers of people in here. Phil's staff also has restarted the process of selling hunting and fishing licenses as a convenience for our patrons. And that was great that they reviewed all that and got that service running again. That was originally an idea of Sean Silvernail, who is our IT director. We are circulating the fishing poles again, and Sean and Maria put together a 2-day safe boating course in the Helderberg room, which also happened in April, but Sean mentions it in his report. We had 122 new library cards in March. That's the highest since pre-pandemic February of 2020. For PPS, I call your attention to, if you need something to listen to while you're driving, the GPL podcast, which is called How Did You Find It? The most recent episode, I believe, is Natalie telling the story of her association with Guilderland lifelong.
Give me the camera.
And Pronunciator, one of our online tools, Pronunciator is a language learning tool. It's interesting this year that, excuse me, this month, that the most popular language people are learning through us in Guilderland is Igbo, which is a language of Western Nigeria. And Youth Services continues to do lots of things in terms of all kinds of things, but I wanted to highlight craft pickup kits, very successful over the last month, and also our planning for the summer reading program. If you haven't been to the Meadow Room in the last 2 weeks, you need to go over and see the mural, basically, that was installed on one of the walls as part of the renovation. It's a very, very beautiful and complex thing. Our IT department found a way to get 49 new circulating hotspots through a program at no charge. So we're cycling those into our circulation, and we've got 4 more public computers out, and John Lorang from our IT department and Luann from the public relations are working on trying to make the website more friendly for people with disabilities. There are some ADA guidelines for constructing websites to make them easy for people to use. So that's a good effort. The public computer usage, I noted in March, 633 adults used a computer and 246 kids used a computer. So that's good, kind of return to normalcy in the library. Maintenance department has had a very, very tough month, and that has meant that all parts of the library have had to come together to cover some basic functions. Of the 4 full-time people in maintenance, we had 1 resign, we had 1 out for COVID, and we had 1 out for major medical all at the same time. We have replaced the full-timer who resigned, so we're now at 2 full-time people, and we're close to resolving both the COVID and the major medical absence. During that time, Lou and the entire staff have been very flexible, and Lou's had to work some extra long hours and so forth. And then just one, it's little, but it's important, this kind of thing. Our garbage and recycling contracts came up for renewal. So Lou did a little work, found a different vendor, and we're going to save $130 a month on those expenses. So in a year, that's a very significant amount of money. So that is the treasurers and, or excuse me, the directors and department reports, which don't need to be accepted, right? So.
Right, we'll just, thank you, Tim, for your report. And now we will move to committee reports. Actually, the first is design. That's my report. And we don't have too many things left, I think, to do, because last meeting, I think we wrapped up the outdoor furniture. And pretty much, I think there were a couple of benches that were design choices, and I think we decided on really all of the outdoor furniture so far. Just really just like colors and things that maybe still are out there. I haven't talked to Megan recently, but to find out if there's anything else outstanding, but in the construction project, but I don't really know of anything other than the outdoor furniture. So it may be that the design committee will not need to meet again, or maybe meet very infrequently if there's anything left. Like I said, I haven't talked to Megan, so I really don't know, but
I think you're generally right. If there is anything left, we'll obviously let you know, but we did have just a quick thing to report on that we have connected with Megan about. So the library was closed for a couple of hours, I think yesterday, because of perception of a natural gas leak. And so the fire department came, and then National Grid came. And the conclusion was that the exhaust from the gas fireplace, which, releases above the roof, was being sucked into the air intake units that circulate the air in the building. And that was happening because it was an exceptionally blustery day. So we've sent Megan an email and said, can we think about creating a higher flue so that these two things are at two different levels on the roof and don't cross-contaminate? So we still have the opportunity if things like that come up, but because the loan is not finalized yet. But in general, we're pretty much done with the administrative end. There's still plenty to do to get materials that have already been ordered and get them installed. But I think most of our oversight work is largely done.
All right, so next is finance. Mike?
The finance committee has not met.
Not met. Building and grounds and long-range planning. Barbara?
Yeah, the long-range planning committee met, and I think you all received from Jenna a slight potential change in the mission statement. And what we were sort of hoping for today is if you would take a close look at that and give us permission, either via vote or consensus, to basically have that as the cornerstone of our long-range plan, because everything that you do from this point on is going to be based on your mission statement. The mission statement now reads, the mission of the Guilderland Public Library is to provide equal access to physical and digital materials, programs, and services to our community for lifelong learning, cultural enrichment, and enjoyment. And I think, as I said, you all have copies of that particular thing. Andy, do you want to just add why we changed the access to physical and digital to equal access as a result of Assemblywoman Hinchy's visit and recommendations?
I think the physical and digital, that was yours, right, Natalie, last time? Way back, right? So what we changed from last time was we added just the equal access. Okay, right, yeah, right, but the notion of access to physical and digital, right, which is really what libraries do. But the equal access came from the video that Tim sent out of Hinchley speaking in favor of the library budget down in the state legislature, saying, this is what it's all about. It's about equal access, right? So that's when I said, well, we should just say equal access, right? And that covers the big thing. And then as we move on and on and on, we say, how well are we doing on equal access? How are we taking care of all of these different groups and stuff and giving them the kind of access that they need? Simple as that.
Okay, is there anyone that has any strong feelings one way or the other on the proposed mission statement?
How would one define equal? How do you measure whether you're giving equal access?
That's part of your strategic planning. Okay, I don't use the word long-range planning because people don't really do long-range planning anymore. Strategic planning is a constant, ongoing taking a look at what's your mission and how well you're doing it. And the notion of what is equal evolves over time. As we reach out to the staff and reach out to the community about, about how can we help you get more learning? How can we help you get more enrichment? How can we help you get more enjoyment? And the stuff bubbles up and you figure out how to do that. That's why I offered the three, what I call key strategic questions, right? And those are the questions we have to constantly be asking ourselves in every encounter with the patrons and with each other. How do we help provide more access to whatever it is, to the learning, the enrichment, and the enjoyment, and then, as I said, strategic thinking and planning is all about how do we continually do our mission better, okay? How do we get more equal over time? Because we can't imagine what that means, right? I mean, the Constitution talks about equality, right? What does that mean? We've been arguing over that since 1787, right? Some of the historians talk about the whole issue in America is always about liberty versus equality, and all of that. So that engages us in the creative thing of becoming more and more of service to our patrons and the community.
Mike, do you have serious concerns with that? Because I also raised that issue in the committee. What do we mean by equal? How do we guarantee that versus provide access to physical and digital materials? We should really get the thoughts of others. Are you comfortable with
So-
using the word, or Mike? Go ahead.
I mean, this is a mission statement, not, not a,
Declaration.
yeah, not a policy. So I mean, I personally, having a term that seems, a little,
Vague.
where it's vague and we don't necessarily know exactly what we mean by that I mean, I can think of a lot of different ways you could think about equal, some of which are obviously not what we're looking for, and others of which are not very helpful or useful to us in what we're trying. I mean, just to give an example, you can think of, what do we mean by equal access? There are people in our community, for example, who are immigrants who do not speak English, and the library provides various, has books that are foreign language books, but it's never going to have an equal variety and selection of items in other languages when the vast majority of the population are English speaking. So it's not equal in that sense, but we are trying to provide a variety of things that can serve different members of the community. But is that equal? What do we mean by equal? I mean, they have equal access to the whole big collection here, but that's kind of, not useful to someone if that's not something that they have the language abilities. That's just to use one example. So what do we mean by equal? It's either just depending on how you can interpret it, it's either an unrealizable standard that really isn't something we're shooting for, or it could just be kind of a word that doesn't really mean anything, that's kind of in there because it sounds good. I don't know if it has a meaning that's really drives the mission, but again, does it hurt anything to have it in there as the mission statement? Maybe not, but what exactly does that, if you're taking that mission statement and saying, this is driving what we're going to think about when we're doing our planning, we're doing our strategic planning, what is it about saying equal access as opposed to just saying access to these various things? How does that change the way we look at, how we're planning or what we're planning? It's not clear to me. So it's just my 2 cents.
I feel like it has to do with intent, right? Like, this is a goal. It's not a statement saying we are currently doing this. It's something we're working towards. And it's saying that we will continuously look at how we're providing access to things and trying to improve that and have it reflect the community need as well. So that will come out when we're touching base with our community and when we're getting this feedback. And if the feedback is, hey, I'm not seeing this, this, and this, are we going to try to address it? Probably. You know what I mean? So we're constantly striving to hit this, we're never going to get 100% equal, like you said, but I think it's a goal to strive towards. I mean, we can pick apart every single word too. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Well, what does life mean to some people? You can't do that.
All men created equal.
Yeah, that's not true.
Obviously,
But
what does that mean?
But saying we're working towards that, I think is a good goal. I think it's 2022. I think that's a thing that a lot of organizations are striving towards. So I think
Right.
that's in alignment with what's important today, I would argue.
Yeah, I think it sends a positive signal to our community and all members of our community. I think it tends to be a word that's aspirational, which is positive. And I think it was Tony who said that the importance of the mission statement for the purposes of putting together a strategic plan. I think the word equal is helpful and useful and sends a very positive message to the people in our community. We can argue about what it means, but when the strategic planning committee puts together its plan, I think that's a good word for them to keep in mind to see how we can address the needs of our community. And I'm in favor of the amendment.
And we should argue about what it means. That's the whole point of strategic planning and everything we do. What does equal mean? Is this moving us towards equal or not? That's the whole aspirational.
Yeah, I don't think it means that you have to provide every single book in Serbian to everybody in the community because we have Serbians who live in our community. I don't think that's the purpose of that word at all.
Yeah.
So I commend the committee, and my vote is to keep the word in. I like the amendment.
And I would just like to point out that the other important word is access.
Yeah.
So even if they're looking for something specific, they have the access to get equity of service. So they have access to ILL, they have access to digital
Right.
services, they have access to
Exactly.
outreach programs.
Yep, I agree, yeah.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, we have your blessing to use this statement that I just read as our mission statement as we move forward. Yes?
Any your vote?
That probably would
Yeah.
cement it if Kathy thinks that that's all right to do right now.
So we're voting on the mission statement as,
for our long-range plan.
okay.
Want me to read it again? So you,
Yeah, why don't you read it again if we're gonna vote on it, so
right.
we'll know what we're voting on.
The mission of the Guilderland Public Library is to provide equal access to physical and digital materials, programs, and services to our community for lifelong learning, cultural enrichment, and enjoyment.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the mission statement? Bill,
I second.
who seconded? I'm sorry.
Andy.
Andy, okay.
We lost library video a while.
Yeah, we lost the video, sorry. All right, and all in favor, would you please signify by raising your hand or saying aye?
Right.
Is anyone opposed? All right, the new mission statement passes unanimously at 7:12 PM. So moving on, the next,
Kathy, can I just add one more thing now that we have the mission statement? What our next step is to try to reach out to the community, perhaps with homeowners associations, whatever we can tap into to try to get a broad spectrum answering these questions. In other words, what they're looking forward to in the library, et cetera. And also, we're just checking out a company called Fact Finders to see if they could put together, I say, a telephone survey as they did with our original plan from back in 2019 or before that, I guess, where people are selected at random. So you're going to get library users, non-library users, various age ranges. But that's just in the planning stages, but that's one source of outreach that we might use.
Right, as well as reaching out to staff at the appropriate time, because this becomes a way to start really getting the staff back together, you know, and dealing with the morale issues and all of that, right, at the appropriate time.
Thanks a lot, Kath.
okay, great, thanks for the report. And thanks for the mission statement. Let's see, the next is the cafe committee. Peter?
So Peter left the meeting at 6:55. So I'm happy to just give the somewhat minor update on that. Basically, there's been no change, no meeting since the last meeting, but Elish has referred a woman to us, a local caterer. And, excuse me, Natalie and I are giving her a tour tomorrow at 10 a.m. So we'll talk to her about that. My question, and I'm sorry to ask what might be a big question, it might get referred back to the cafe committee. When the cafe committee last met, we decided that we needed to reissue the RFP, but a much shorter version. And since that meeting, I've not shared this thought with you, Kathy, who I believe, well, Peter chairs the committee, but you're on it. Could it not be argued that we already did issue an RFP to the community and we didn't get any responses? And so if we can simply find a vendor that the community has had an equal chance.
I think we could reissue, I mean, I think the last RFP was a little long. And I think we could come up with something shorter. I think the cafe committee should probably meet and discuss this in more detail.
Okay.
Kind of RFP would be best to, and I know that there were some some interest, I guess, from some people. So I think maybe sooner than later, issue another RFP. So that's just,
My experience with a lot of procurements in state government is you can't issue an RFP, get no results, and then just pick somebody.
Okay,
Okay, that's the state laws I was under. I don't know
Okay.
how that affects you guys, but, you can have all kinds of problems if you just pick somebody after
Okay.
that. Because that, who could it be? I mean, what's the process?
my brother Bob,
Right, exactly.
all right. Well, we want to follow the right process.
Yep.
So,
And by the way, the second RFP can't, and I've seen people get in trouble for this, so someone comes forward, says, I want it, I didn't respond to the first RFP, then you craft an RFP that's exactly what that person wants to do, you can really get into problems with that too.
no, I don't think that was our intention. I think it was just.
No, I'm
That,
just saying
that,
you gotta be
that,
careful.
that was discouraging to people, I think, because the last RFP just had a lot of, maybe it was a little too complex. So I think that simplifying the RFP and taking away some of that complexity might make it, easier for people to understand it and respond to it. There was no intention to tailor it to any particular, entity or person. It was just a matter of just making it more, just understandable and less complex.
And that'll be in the minutes, all right, and then you're protected.
All right, the next is foundation, Norina.
Yeah, so the foundation met yesterday. There's a lot of good ideas that were discussed. There's finally quorum, the meetings changed, so they're now on the fourth Thursday of every month. They're still looking for volunteers, so if people who want to get involved in the foundation, just spread the word. We came out with two ideas, one that was already pretty much established from last year, which is the golf tournament, and they're already planning that at the Pine Haven Golf Course, catered by Ilium, which is the caterer there on site. That's gonna be on Monday, August 22nd. And they already have about $3,750 in sponsors, but they're always looking for more. There is a letter that they've issued that we can share. They've asked us to, share with whoever's interested in sponsoring. There's different levels. There's like a level of $150, $250, $500, and $1,000. And also, if you know people who would like to participate in the golf tournament, it was a great turnout last year, so they're hoping for the same. And then the second event, we threw out a lot of good ideas, but ultimately decided this year is the 30th anniversary of the building, this library's building, in June. And although I had reached out to some authors to try to get something done by June with the schedule for the library already having events scheduled and June coming up so soon, we decided to move it to October. So it's going to be a grand opening event, kind of in two parts. We decided Friday, October 21st will be for adults, and we'll have a jazz band and music and food and drinks. And then Saturday, October 22nd, we're trying to get the author for Pete the Cat to come and read to the kids and play the songs associated with the books. And then mini golf, ice cream, face painting, and all the craziness that goes with like having kids come to the library and celebrate. I think the animals are coming from an animal farm. And I think we also discussed possibly doing trunk or treat 2 weekends after that, because that would be the weekend of Halloween. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. I'm really excited about all the events, but especially the grand opening, since we didn't really have one. That was.
We had the ceremonial one, but not the public one,
And I'm hoping the numbers obviously don't go up again, and so we didn't even think about that, but hopefully you know, we could do that. And I think that's it for the foundation.
That sounds like a lot. Was there anything for personnel, Narina?
No, we didn't meet.
Okay, and then labor management, we did have a meeting recently, and I just can't remember what the major issue was. Maybe I'll ask you, Tim.
Sure. Well, the major issue that will face the Personnel Committee in the future is the negotiation of the CSEA contracts, which, excuse me, expire on June 30th. And so we talked a little bit about that at the end of our labor management meeting. And the unions are going to provide some dates to us for possibly beginning the negotiation, which happens under the auspices of the Personnel Committee rather than under labor management. But you kind of begin the discussion in labor management. Other than that, I'm afraid I can't remember either. I do have some notes on my phone, but it would probably take me a minute to find them. But I would characterize the meeting as constructive and, it was really some problem solving rather than anything dramatic or difficult that the two sides were working on. So I left the meeting feeling good about the process, and it's basically the process is to, the purpose of the quarterly labor management meetings is to discuss items of mutual interest or concern. And I guess I would say they were more of interest than of concern this particular time around. So.
Right, okay. I agree. All right, policy, Barbara.
Okay, we have a meeting scheduled for, I think it's May 13th at noon. Yes, May 13th at noon. And what we'll, at the moment, planning on looking at is clarifying in the bylaws, say committee assignments. In years past, the process has always been that once the president is elected, that individual will ask for preferences as to committee assignments, and then to the degree possible, and with some bartering amongst fellow board members, the positions are filled. We strayed away from that process under our former president, and where people were just assigned, and you as newcomer, I think, just followed the process. But from a democratic standpoint and from a collegial standpoint, it's better if, people have input as to their assignments. So we're going to take a look at that part of the bylaws. And also to further clarify, and again, to make it democratic, no matter who the president is at the time, if you're recruiting a new trustee for a vacancy, or in this upcoming case, you have an opening for a treasurer, that the resumes are available to all the board members. Perhaps an individual committee may screen some of the candidates, but those who qualify will be presented to the board, and the board will have a special meeting if necessary to meet the candidates and then come to a collective decision. So we're going to take a look at that because, we had complaints from, I think, Tony and Vanessa saying that, it just didn't feel right. So we're going to look at it. And we haven't done the 5-year check on a lot of our old policies. So we're going to take a look if we have time to, to update and review some of the old policies that haven't been looked at in years. That's it.
Okay. So, and I don't think Vanessa is here. I know there were some emails about the COVID action plan, and I just don't remember what it was about. Maybe something about the plan that needed updating. I don't know if anybody has anything on that.
It might have been a wrong email address or something.
Might have been what? Okay, so we'll go on to UHLS and, as you probably remember, Tony Rapicki was the UHLS representative, so that's, an open position unless anybody would like to volunteer to be our UHLS, representative.
Kathy, just a quick question.
Sure.
Does his new job prevent him from even doing that volunteer position? It doesn't seem to be any conflict of interest there, but, or has anybody asked him if he would be willing to continue at least in that slot?
That's a good point. I hadn't actually thought about that. So,
I don't, in his resignation letter, he does, he does say that he's resigning from the UHLS thing as well.
Mhm.
But I don't know if he just assumed that that went along with it, or he just doesn't have time for it, or whatever, but he did say that.
All right, is it at least worth having Tim or you, Kathy, reach out to him and say, we'd so love to have you for this if it doesn't conflict, if you have the time and energy to do it?
Yeah, he's
I
not
mean,
able to.
it's worth asking. So, unless somebody else is really anxious to take that.
I don't mind asking him, but the way I read the sentence, he says, I will be sending a similar message to Tim Burke as I will not be able to continue on the UHLS board. Now, I don't know if that's because of his time or because of the perceived conflict of interest, but UHLS can be audited as well, and that's probably the nature of that commitment. So I'm happy to send him an email, but I think the answer is going to be I can't serve on that board either.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that he specifically resigned from UHLS, and that's
Right.
why I put open position there. So, if anybody, I mean, I don't know if anybody, on the board wants to volunteer, or if we should just,
May I suggest that I put Natalie on the spot? Natalie is a former UHLS staff member, but also a former UHLS board member. And in both of those contexts has been to the meetings. So she could probably give a quick summary of what's required.
It just has to be someone that lives in the Guilderland area. It does not have to be a Guilderland trustee.
And there's monthly meetings?
Monthly meetings, I believe they are the second or third Wednesday of the month at 4:30. And the finance committee meets at 4.
Okay.
They have to go with the finance committee too.
Depending on what seat is available. I don't know what Tony had on there.
I don't think he was on finance, but I don't know.
You could ask any candidates that you're starting to get for treasurer, they'd be interested in doing that as well.
And it literally could be anyone who lives in Guilderland. So it could also be a staff member if a staff member is interested in that, could it not?
No, it cannot be a staff member.
Okay.
okay, well, to be announced, I guess, with that position.
We could, just to throw it out there, we could add that to the, like, if we're placing an ad in the enterprise for the treasurer, we could say we also need a UHLS board member in the same ad. And as Tim pointed out, Tim Riley, maybe the new treasurer would want to do that.
Maybe. We could float that one and see if people are interested.
I think Phil
So,
Metzger would make a good representative.
Old business, unless there's
Yes.
more on UHLS.
No, I'm good.
Then somebody's jumping up and down to volunteer. Old business is the farmer's market, and I believe everyone should have gotten a copy of the draft contract. And I don't know. Let's see. So everyone should have gotten a copy of the draft contract between Guilderland and the person who runs the farmer's market. I don't know, Tim, was that contract run by the vendor?
Yes. So the contract was written by Chris Lanchanton, and I got it yesterday, as I explained in an email, and so sent it right out to you guys. And the vendor, Guilderland Farmers Market LLC, the DBA for Scott Abraham, did note one typo here, miscommunication between Chris and myself. It's $200 per month, not $200 per week. So it's essentially $50 per week. So we would need to.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty lucrative.
Yeah, yeah. So we would need to note that change, but other than that, he said the contract is fine from his perspective.
Can I
So
ask a question? Just-
is this contract, Tim, had you sent it to us for, potential board approval of this contract?
Yes, from the point of view, and obviously we'll entertain questions, but he's with a farmer's market starting in July. He's really he needs to begin marketing and solidifying vendors. So he doesn't have another month basically to wait for us. So we could always theoretically pass on it, and if he was interested next year, we could have more time, but he's pretty much said he needs to know now. So
Can I ask a quick question just about the fee? Just it's the way it's written here, it's got it in 3 installments in July, August, and September. It says to include October payment. The dates of this, it only has 1 weekend in October.
right.
So on a weekly basis, I understand if we're charging a certain amount a week, but if it's per month, does that mean, are they paying for October or not? It's unclear here, because it sounds like they'd be paying for an entire month's fee for one
So-
single Sunday. That doesn't make sense.
I've got you there. That's my error. I got it back from Chris Lanchanton, but it didn't have payable dates. And so I said, well, I'm going to stick some payable dates in here. And at that point, I was reading the draft that said $200 per week. So I thought, well, let's get 3 payments, one in July, one in August, and one in September, which would include what I thought at the moment was the $200 for October. But we could just strike that forward clause and say 3 installments on the first days of July, August, and September. And I also note that I need to capitalize August there.
So he gets October 2nd free? Is that Sunday?
Essentially, yeah, or it's included with September,
Why couldn't he just do a $50 payment for that week? That would make more sense.
Well, I can certainly negotiate that with him and do the rewrite as, to fit that idea.
Are
And
there more weeks in one month versus another? Would that balance out?
I haven't checked, so.
Tim, just a quick note, because I think this came up yesterday, but there was going to be language added in that the table for the library was going to be free. We were going to make sure those
Okay.
were.
Which letter?
Is that 4, number
Okay.
4?
Okay, that's a good one.
We had mentioned that stipulation yesterday, just to be very abundantly clear.
I'm sure-
Tim, I have a number of questions about this.
Okay,
I don't want to hold it up, but in number 1, there will be no access to the library building. Well, that works in July and August when the library is closed on Sunday, but it's not going to work for September and October when the library is open. You can't stop people from using the bathrooms or going into the library.
right, I noticed that as well, but I just assumed that if the library was open, as it is in September and October, that would not apply. We could add, there will be no access to the library building on Sundays in July and August, if you'd like.
We could. And where are people going to park? In the regular parking lot?
Yeah, yep. And then it'll be in the upper parking lot, the new one.
Well, wait a minute.
Oh.
If the vendors are going to be in the upper parking lot,
Now, Michael?
I assume that that's going to take up most of the space. And so people are going to be using our parking lot, the lower parking lot, as needed, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
and most of the time, that's not an issue because we're closed anyway.
Right, yeah, I'm just trying to clarify. I assume that
Sure.
Chris was okay with using our premises for a for-profit endeavor, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Number 2, use of the word regional farmers market.
Mhm.
It's the only time it's used here. Does it mean anything or?
That would be a question for Chris. I could strike it or I could ask Chris.
Okay. Number three, A, 2A. In addition, Scott Abraham will provide a personal guarantee and indemnification on behalf of himself of Farmers Market LLC. Do we have a form of this? Is it going to be backed up by anything?
I don't,
He's acting on behalf of the LLC, so I'm not sure what it's meant by a personal guarantee and indemnification. Is it just
not
for the LLC or is it for himself and the LLC? I think that needs to be clarified.
okay.
The insurance has got to be approved by our insurance broker. I don't have a problem with that.
I believe he has already. I will double check, but I think I
Okay.
said. Yeah.
Do we have a list of the vendors? I mean, does he have a process and procedure for the kind of vendors who can be a part of this farmers market?
Well, the only.
Have we seen them?
We've seen them, I've seen them by attending the farmer's market, the last year's vendors, but the only thing that we talked about in the board, when we talked about this last, which I believe was last month, but might have been 2 months ago, was there was a certain kind of vendor that one of you knew a term for. MLM, and he doesn't use MLMs, and assured us in an email that it's all, it's not like the Avon table. It's
Right.
it's Joe's farm products.
Okay, so it's local vendors and
Yeah,
not corporate
yeah.
types. Okay. Farmers, I'm in F. Farmers Market LLC is solely responsible for the conduct of the vendors, and patrons will provide security. What does that mean?
I don't know, but when I've attended his farmer's market, which I've done probably a dozen times over the last 5 or 6 years, there was no visible security presence. I believe that Chris probably put that in there to indicate that we were not responsible for the conduct of the vendors or providing security.
So there's going to be actual people there to make sure that there are no disruptions, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I can clarify that with Scott. He did say the whole contract was okay with him, but I can't speak to his intent to provide a security officer, and I frankly don't think one is necessary.
Okay.
I mean, that just a representative steps in and removes somebody if there's a
He
problem.
attends his farmer's market,
Right.
so he's probably going to provide it himself.
Is
So-
he the person who ran the one that was on 155 and Western? Is that the same person?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and then it moved to the Guilderland Center Shopping Center.
Okay. In 3, in exchange for the use of the library, it probably should say event site.
Instead of parking lot,
Yeah.
isn't the event site more a broader term?
Yeah, but we're really talking about, they're not paying us for the use of the parking. They're paying us for the use of the lot, the upper lot, which is the event site. I mean, it's just wordsmithing on my part, but,
Or just add upper parking lot.
Yeah.
It's already
well, but
defined.
event site is a
So
defined
I
term.
would, yeah, I think it makes sense just to use event site because it's
Yeah,
defined.
it's a defined term.
My only concern is that the event site could be interpreted to mean any part of the land the library owns.
No,
Okay,
it's
Okay.
defined in
okay.
number 1. And let's see, what else did I have? And number 4, can you just explain what that means?
Yes, so like if, for example, the library wanted to allow some volunteers to sell books on our behalf, or if the library wanted to put a staff member out there to try to give people new library cards, which I know would only happen in September when we're open. Or if the youth services staff wanted to provide a free craft kit to any.
Okay,
kids.
got it. Okay,
And then there's one other angle on that though, Marcia, which is, and I don't know, I don't remember who came up with this idea, but somebody thought that the library might want to facilitate, for example, community caregivers or the Guilderland food pantry having a
Okay.
table. So anyway, so that concept is is there as well.
So when you
Okay.
say a spot, that just means space. He's
Yeah.
not gonna provide us
Yeah.
an easy up or anything.
No,
like
no.
that.
I have a question.
Okay,
So the school district owns our property,
okay.
right? So, does that make any difference in this contract at all?
I will check with Chris Lanchanton and Marie Wiles and see if we have standing to enter into this contract. Is that the question?
Yeah. Thanks, Kathy. I missed that one. I had it underlined and I missed it
Wow.
because I thought the school district owned the property.
Are there fence held on the property?
Well, it sounds like
No.
we're not going to be approving this contract this evening. Sounds
Correct.
like there's a little bit of work that needs to be done still.
Right, but if he needs something soon or it's all over, we may need to do a special, Zoom meeting or something to approve it, so we don't hang till next month.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of doing this. It's just that when I look at it, these things just needed clarification and maybe some wordsmithing, but I don't have a problem with the concept at all. I think it's a great thing.
Right, so once we've got the updated language, we've checked into the stuff, we could ship out the thing and we could have a special, 15-minute meeting that says, yep, go ahead.
Fine with me.
Tim, on number 4, we have to insert the library will provide a spot at no cost at all farmers market LLC events like Natalie pointed out.
Right,
They-
right, thank
Right, we
you.
already have that.
But they would charge us for using. That's-
Someone else pointed that out too.
Yeah.
There was one more thing about, that I had a question about
Okay.
the contract. Would the farmer's market be allowed to, advertise on our sign?
I would think not, because I can double check that with Chris, but if we essentially rent out our parking lot through this contract, that's apparently allowable according to Chris. But if we put an advertisement on that sign, it's gonna take staff time to create the advertisement, and paying a public employee to create an advertisement for a private business is probably not a good idea. So I was planning not to do that myself.
Makes sense. All right, so sounds like we've discussed this quite a bit, and there's a few things that need to be looked at.
I will compliment the board for doing excellent diligence and quite quickly, so thank you. And I'll follow up on the concerns.
Okay, sounds good. So if there's no other old business, I think the grand opening and 30th anniversary celebration, I think that Norina touched on that in the foundation report, as I recall. But Tim, do you have anything to talk about with the potential grand opening?
Just that, for any staff that are watching, this concept has been kicked around by Luann and myself and others on staff. And a grand opening, I would just say, has to be a staff, board, and foundation event. Like, it's gonna take all of us to pull off something good. Even if all you're doing is participating, although there will be need for people to set up and take down and, maybe if an author is coming, maybe someone needs to pick them up at the airport, and all that, we can't just automatically assume will be a staff function. So it'll probably be a little all hands on deck, but it'll be a great celebration for the community, so.
I think the committee can create like a. list
Right,
of
and
things
when,
people can sign up.
remind me, when was that slated to occur?
October 21st and
22nd.
22nd.
And the one other thing I would add is that the Friday night event that Norina described is a foundation fundraiser. So the last time we did a similar event. It was called Jazzed Up at Your Library, and it was a $35 ticket for hors d'oeuvres. And I can't remember if it was cash bar or open bar, but I think it was open. Can't quite remember, but you know, you apply for a liquor license, we'll do that. You know, for some of the people in this room or serving as board members virtually here, maybe all you got to do is buy a ticket for your wife or your spouse and yourself and enjoy the party. But, you know, we would like everybody in the library community to be participating in some way, so. And we'd like you all to play golf as well.
Sounds like a great event.
No.
So was there anything else about the grand opening that anyone wanted to add? Any?
I guess I would just also add that, you know, Norina and Beth Frienti, the head of youth services, have worked on this a little bit together, and we'll get some staff input as well beyond the point where we are now to help them, to give them a role in shaping the event as well. So both the board, the foundation, and the staff, all three of them, we'll probably come up with some good ideas, contacts, authors, et cetera.
Great.
Forgive me if I'm speaking out of line. Is the intent to charge the public for a grand opening because it's a foundation fundraiser?
So the grand
Aren't
opening
they- aren't you
events
mixing
are
the two together?
Saturday, and the fundraiser is Friday night. That the intent was to separate them. The fundraiser is a part of the grand opening, but it's the part where you do ask the public for financial support, and that's the role of the foundation. So that would be primarily their event, and then the events on Saturday that are for all who choose to come at no charge would be library staff and board pulling those things on. So, and the foundation would probably help as well. So,
Yeah, well, the foundation definitely said they'll pay for the author,
yeah, that's right. Yep.
so that's a significant expense.
Mhm.
Right. So, is there any more public input?
No, no other public input tonight.
Okay.
Kathy, let me ask a question about public input. So we got that letter or something from the guy in the beginning. How does that get responded to?
We haven't typically responded to public input. I mean, it just gives the public a chance to be heard during a meeting, but it really has never been a question and answer. So,
In fact, that's the guidance in the trustee handbook is, it's not meant to be a two-way conversation in a board meeting. It's what happens, the intent of public comment periods, as I've been told through webinars and through this handbook, is a member of the public makes his or her comment. And if the board decides it's an important issue, they can decide to look into it. And in this particular case, the gentleman works here, so I've already spoken with him about it. And I'm continuing to work on the issue that he's talking about. But the question's even more important if they don't work here, because then there's not an automatic avenue for feedback, you know? So, but it's a little surprising to me personally, but this is the only board I've ever really been associated with. And so as I've learned about board functions and so forth, I don't know what it says in Robert's Rules of Order, but in the trustee handbook, it says it's time for the board to receive comments. And then if they decide to do anything about them, that's up to the board. So,
Kath?
yes?
Just
Barbara?
typically though, when somebody from the public writes us with a concern, just as a matter of courtesy, I think most boards will respond to that individual, at least thanking them for their letter. And if there's any way that some of their questions can be answered, you know, the director or the board president normally would, you know, respond in that fashion. But if you get letters and then nobody responds to you, then, it seems like a exercise in futility. So as I said, just as a courtesy, I think, either the board president or the director, if it doesn't happen to be a staff member, as it is in this case, should respond with at least a thank you, for participating, and we'll look into your concerns, however you want to word it. But there's got to be some kind of communication with the individual.
So I agree with what Barb just said, and I think, I completely agree that I think as a normal practice, we shouldn't be responding immediately after the comment, because it just risks derailing your agenda and what you were planning to discuss. But having some sort of process, which could be informal, but having some sort of process in place where we make sure that each comment is at least being considered, is this something that needs to be delegated to somebody to look into? Is this something that, deserves at least a response saying, thank you for your concern? Is this something that's whatever, just making sure somebody's actually looking at them so things don't fall through the cracks? It's probably a good idea.
So you're saying that going forward, having just like an action item at the end of each statement saying
Well-
like, let's thank this person, let's look into this.
Or it doesn't have to be during the meeting. It could be,
Right.
maybe it's the president, and maybe we just say that after every meeting, the president kind of looks at each public comment that we received and says, do I either, does this go to a committee? Do we just send a quick email, say thanks for your concern? Do we put this on a future agenda? Whatever, and just evaluate each of them just to make sure that they don't just kind of get read out and then they disappear because they just get forgotten about and nothing happens.
Some sort
Barb,
of
that might be a policy committee concern, short something's basically saying what Mike's been saying, what the board's policy is, on it at some point, right? Barb?
Is that a matter for the policy committee to discuss on their already full agenda?
I guess it could be, but I just see it as a matter of courtesy, that you respond to, somebody from the public. I mean, I'm sure we could write up a policy, but do we really need to? I mean, the fewer the better, the way I look at them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much we need to formalize it. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but it's just,
Right.
as long as we are kind of comfortable that there's some sort of process in place, whether that's totally informal or something we want as an official policy or whatever. I don't have a strong opinion about that, but just because there have been in the past times where comments have come up and I thought, oh, that's an interesting point. I wonder about that. And then it just kind of falls away. I never hear anything about it again. So, yeah.
So I do agree with you, Barbara, that it's a nice practice. One thing I want to say in addition to what I said is that the handbook also says if the board president who's running the meeting chooses to engage with the person, because typically these meetings are held in person and the person giving public comment is there in person. So it's up to the board president, according to the handbook, if he or she wants to immediately engage in that discussion.
I think I agree with Mike on that one, that you just open yourself up to all kinds of mistakes unless there's something egregious that, the person has said, and, you just have to respond to that. But it's usually better to take the information in, get your information, and then respond. That's why they say it's a meeting of the board, not a dialogue with the public. You want to hear from the public, but you want your responses to be thought out and then shared.
Yeah, I agree with Barbara. I think it could be disruptive, and I think after the meeting, we can have a process where the board president can call or the executive director can call and thank them for their comment. And if it's something that we should discuss, then we should make a point of putting it on the agenda.
And I agree with all of you. I think also in the handbook, it's like, the president should choose to respond if it's just a really cut and dried thing,
Mhm.
like, as a matter of fact, we are closed on Easter Sunday, but thank you for your comment, or something like that.
Okay, well, sounds like maybe Tim, you and I should get together and maybe make sure that we're on the same page in terms of a response.
Okay.
All right. Is there anything else, anybody wants to discuss? Bring up? Phil?
I'd like to make a motion to end the meeting, a couple of minutes before the scheduled time for the first time in years.
Do I
I'll
have a
second that. I'll second that.
Marcia, okay, great. Well, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 7:55 PM. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you all for your service.
Good night.
Thank you, Tim.
David wrote in my book that he asked for his endorsement to be on the board.
We saw him at the egg.
Uh-huh. And what did he write?
To Alicia, if you were on my library board, I would never get sleep all day in the library.
I would never again sleep all day.
In the library.
Interesting. Which it must be in one of the essays somewhere?
No.
No,
Okay.
we went to go see him and I said, hey, I'm running for the library board. Would you endorse me? for the
Oh,
library
there you
board?"
go.
It's one of her signatures to get on the
So that's,
ballot.
yeah, that's what, yeah, he
Love
wasn't a Guilderland resident, so he couldn't sign my sheet.
So next time you go see David Sedaris, say, would you like to just come over to our library and,
Oh my gosh, we
He
should.
probably would have, too.